Welcome to the Art of Badassery, where I explore what it takes to live life on your own terms, break free from the status quo, and unleash your inner badass. Whether you're a rebel at heart or simply seeking inspiration to step outside your comfort zone, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and each week I dive into the stories, insights, and strategies of those who have mastered the art of badassery and are living life to the fullest. They smile when no one is looking. Welcome to another episode of the Art of Badassery podcast. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and we are joined by a truly awesome guest today, a woman who gets what it means to be herself and not give a damn about what society thinks. Her story, well, it's like a big high five for being badass. I'm going to take you back a bit. In the sprawling mountains outside of Las Vegas, back in the 1980s, our guest, Sarah Perez, began crafting her story. At the tender age of 14, Sarah penned short stories that, let's say, pushed the boundaries of conventional norms, stories deemed a little improper for a young lady to write about. So she chose to silence her creative spirit and embarked on a path familiar to her father. She became an engineer just like he was. However, life can lead us back to our true calling. Sarah's innate multi-passion nature eventually led her to explore her creative side, albeit sparingly. Her journey then took a detour when she became sick during her corporate career. Misdiagnosed with an autoimmune disease, she ventured into the world of nutrition, an area that had always interested her. But that wasn't the final chapter of her transformative journey. Along the way, Sarah discovered the power and healing of Reiki. She not only became a certified Reiki practitioner, but also began teaching other women how to heal themselves through the practice. Yet, there was still something missing, something waiting to be uncovered. Sarah's unique blend of heart-opening exercises and crystals for dream recall in her practice revealed a hidden world within her, characters that yearned to be part of a greater story. So she started to write, and in just 1 month, she had her very first manuscript for a novel. More than just a story, this journey of self-expression and creativity became her way to heal her shame for wanting something unconventional. Today, Sarah Perez stands proudly as a published author, confident in her authentic self, unburdened by the opinions of others. As she likes to say, that's none of my business. Join us today as we take a deep dive into her incredible journey. The engineer turned Reiki practitioner turned nutrition enthusiast and now a published author. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I love that energy. When I read your bio, I kept saying, "Oh, that's cool. Oh, wow, that's cool." Okay, wait a second. I want to go back to 14 in those stories. So, um, at the consequence of maybe being told no, I'm going to say, can we go back to when you were just discovering your creative side as a young woman in outside the hills of Las Vegas?
Yeah, so that's interesting. It feels like a million years ago. It's like okay. But yeah, when I was 14, about 14, I was in high school and I really I read pretty much everything from Stephen King, right? I love Stephen King. He was amazing. I stopped reading his stuff because there was just one book that I'm like, I'm never reading this stuff again. But anyway, the horror side of it was very fascinating to me. And so I said, oh, well, what if I start writing my own stories? And I started writing my own stories, and a lot of it had to do with like vampires and, single women that were, they had good careers. They lived in high rise apartments. I mean, everybody's rich in my stories, right? but, but when you're 14 and you're raised in a church, um, those stories are not very Christian like. And there's a lot of conflict that goes on within you when you're like a good girl, big air quotes there, right? and these stories that are seemingly dangerous. There's sex in them. And it's like, but what do you know about sex? You're 14. And I didn't know anything about it at the time. I mean, I was innocent for the most part, but I had a lot of curiosities. And when I wrote about what I thought it, was like, um, I became very embarrassed and very ashamed of myself. Like, no, I should know better than this. I'm a good Christian girl. I I'm not going to write this stuff anymore.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's so interesting that women in particular, again and again and again, fall into this trap of, I need to do differently. I need to be other than who I am. And really, this has nothing to do per se with being a Christian, but it has, I think, to do more with buying into the bullshit that we are
Mm,
told. And I want to preface this by saying, I truly believe that our parents, our friends, our family, we are all doing the best we can with what we have in the moment. But I want to call out that it's pretty courageous and ballsy, or maybe I should say vagina-y, to
there you
pick
go.
up a pen after reading Stephen King and say, I'm going to write horror stories. Right? I mean, that takes guts. And I just want to commend you for that. Regardless of what you did with those stories, that's a
Right.
beautiful representation of the excitement that lives within every child. And that, you said it earlier, was curiosity. So
Mhm.
yay for you, high five for that. All right. So you put, obviously somebody saw your books, read your stories, and like, Sarah, this is unacceptable. This is not good Christian reading. Um, dampen that down and just focus on your study, correct?
Actually, I was so ashamed that I burned them. I did not let anybody read them at all.
Oh.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I, in the past, I've always been one to shame myself before anybody else could or judge myself before anybody else could. So there was a certain, I don't know, the angel and the devil on your shoulder. I always liken it to that, like the angel and the devil. My angel was like 800 feet tall, and my devil was like an inch tall, saying, "No, you should really write these. It'd be really sexy." And then my angel was like, "Hell no," So it was, yeah. I had so much of that already built up by the age of 14 that I'm like, mm-mm, not sharing this. Too risky, too risky. I could get judged. People could, call me a devil worshiper or whatever, whatever it is. Um, and I found out later that a lot of it was my mom's trauma, like ancestral trauma. It wasn't because my dad was relatively open minded about things like that, but my mom was raised in a Catholic church where that kind of just like trickled down to me as an example, but that's not who I was. I was just trying to play that role.
You've hit on something really important, which I think is worth talking about, this idea that we often take on roles that aren't ours because it's expected of us, or it is handed down through the generations. And it's sometimes, despite feeling uncomfortable or not like me, not like us, we still do it because it seems easier to give in than to stand up and put ourselves in line of fire. For example, I'm going to be
Oh,
judged.
yeah.
What will mom think? This is going to hurt their feelings. Or, yeah. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm curious though, once you burnt them, did that make you feel better? Or did you just close the door and never go there again until you were older?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it made me feel better, but it made me feel like I was closing a door. Exactly. Like you said, it made me feel like I was closing a door. And I was like, I will just find a different way to be creative. I mean, I play piano, I write songs. I was in a couple of bands. There are so many things that I've done and tried just to get that creative side out because I can't help but express it, right? So it felt like I was closing a door, but at the same time, I had so many doors open that I could pick a path, you know?
Beautiful. Okay, so you burnt the books, the incredibly scandalous books that you wrote at 14, vampires and young, wealthy corporate women, and you studied engineering.
Yes.
Did you see the creative side of engineering and recognize that, or did you go into it because daddy did it and it seemed the easiest path? I'm curious.
Yeah. So I actually did resonate with the creative side of engineering. I'm kind of a math geek. So I love math. I love uh, specifically like geometry, right? Which is shapes and figures and stuff like that. And so the engineering side of it was really easy to be creative as long as I was able to draw something. When I got into corporate, it quickly changed into something that I had to balance finances and numbers and budgeting, and that was heavy. And I didn't have time to draw and use that creative side, and I had to pass off that work. So essentially I was a project managing engineer, and I could feel my soul being sucked out daily.
Okay, I want to jump in because, first of all, that's a great description. I can tell you're a writer. But if for for our listeners today, can you give us some concrete examples of how what you mean when you say I could feel my soul being sucked out daily? Like I know what you mean, but I'm wondering if you can just tell us straight talk. You go into work, what were you feeling?
Disappointment.
Okay, that's a good word.
Um, I would, in any given day, I would walk into the office and it was like a thick cloud that you could cut with a butter knife. And I could, before people even opened their mouth to start to complain about something that was wrong in the way the rules were, I could feel it in my gut. I could feel it in my chest. And if it wasn't for some of my really fantastic coworkers, I probably wouldn't have made it as long as I did, because I would literally go in there, and the one thing that would perk me up is to talk to people about their personal lives. I had a buddy in there that I talked to ad nauseum about different religions and stuff like that. And that stuff lights me up because I'm, again, very curious, right? It's one of my superpowers. And just to learn about other people's religions and other people's lives in general, really awesome. But hearing about how somebody's complaining over and over and over and over again about the same thing that seemingly could not be changed by somebody at our level, it's very disheartening to hear that, to be a part of that, to succumb to, okay, well, these are the rules, so that's why we do it. And that's something that my inner rebel was like, get the fuck out, please. And I'm like, no, I can't. I need money. Like, so there was that.
So how long were you in the corporate world?
I I'm currently still in the corporate world. I got one foot in and one foot out, right? So 19 years I've been an engineer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know I can certainly relate to what you're saying. And again, it comes down to this idea of how do we find the balance? How do I justify allowing my soul to be sucked out of me with a smile on my face as I deposit the paycheck? Like what is the balance and where do I draw the line on putting myself first? So many of us, women especially, struggle with that. Like where's the boundary? Like when is it okay for me to flip somebody the bird? Or when is it okay for me to say, you know what, this actually is not working for me anymore. And in order for me to stay, then I'm going to invite you to look at things differently. I mean, that takes a lot of guts, and it's certainly something that I work on with my clients on a regular basis. So, by the way, I really want to highlight that the thing that you loved most about your work when it was soul sucking on the one hand was that you were also doing what I think humans desperately want to do, which is feel a connection and have conversations and learn and grow and be there. So it's kind of interesting that you had both this beautiful opportunity to have great friendships and to connect, and this realization, this dawning realization that, wow, I am not happy here, despite how happy I was perhaps at the beginning. Okay, so you became very ill. Can you share with us when that came about and how that sort of played out?
Yeah, I was a new mother at the time. So I just thought, "Oh, I'm tired all the time because, I'm a new mom. I'm not sleeping at night. I'm waking up 5 times to feed the baby," that kind of thing, right? Kid kids got a little bit older, and of course I had another one, and I'm like, oh, okay, so it's because I'm older. And because with my second one they called me of advanced maternal age, which was really funny. And I kept on making fun of it because I'm like, really, I'm like in my late 30s, whatever, and I'm having a baby, big deal, right? Like, it's like the 21st century, people. So anyway, I was labeled as that, and I was constantly monitored and stuff. And after I had the second baby, it was, I could barely stay awake to say their prayers at night. I literally so exhausted, slurring my words even during the daytime sometimes. I was that tired. I was almost like a functioning zombie. My skin was even gray. A good friend of mine told me, I don't want to offend you. I was like, but, and he's like, your skin is gray. You don't look well, and I'm praying for you. And I'm like, wow. And that really woke me up. I was on the tread, and this is actually when I started my health coaching business, right? So I'm on the treadmill. It's 4 a.m. I'm doing my slides for my workshop and stuff like that, right? Because I was online health coach, and I was working full time, and I had two babies and all the things, right? And I remember thinking, man, I'm doing this. I'm gonna do this dang thing. I'm doing this. I'm gonna create a successful business, and then I'm gonna retire from engineering. And that linear thinking got me in trouble. Uh, I went into work and doing my normal thing. My boss comes up to my desk and says, "Oh, can you come into the office when you get a chance?" And I'm like, "Sure. I'm just gonna wrap up this one thing. I have a lot of phone calls to make and coordination and all that stuff." He took me into a separate office with another boss that wasn't mine, and there was a stack of papers. And he said, "Well, we have to let you know that you are the first one to be laid off today." And I was like, "Thank you, Jesus." Like, I had never been so happy and disappointed in my whole entire, like, on one hand, I had no freaking clue what I was going to do for money. you know. On the other hand, I was so blessed to be released. And then I thought to myself, because you said earlier, boundaries, right? I thought to myself, I don't have good boundaries. That is exactly why I'm in this situation. I did not assess my own boundaries. I had to have the universe assess my boundaries for me and be like, no, this is it, Sarah. You got to get out of here. And that's when I finally took a break, but it wasn't a real break. I took all of those bad habits and non-boundaries into my health coaching business.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
First off, I can so relate to your story. I won't get into it here, but suffice to say, when I was invited to leave the corporate world, I too did a happy dance. And I recognized that the universe was giving me the opportunity that I had been secretly asking for through my behavior and denial for years.
Yeah.
So I'm super crazy proud of you. But when you said that you took the same behavior and challenges, limiting beliefs, whatever it was that you said into your new business, I had a bit of a cringe
Mm.
because there's got to be, when did you realize in the new business that you actually hadn't really progressed much?
I wasn't making any money. I was undercharging for the and overworking and overgiving. The people pleaser syndrome kind of thing, right? And the money mindset stuff and all that stuff. So I was doing all of that. I was giving away my valuable time, knowledge, effort, um, help in transformation and guidance for not enough money to feed my family. And that's how I was basically taught. So I ended up getting a business coach, and I was like, oh, well, maybe they can help me. And I did everything like a good student should, and it did not work for me. It only burned me out further. So, yeah,
When,
it was not fun.
when did the illness, when did you, where did the sickness, illness come into play?
Before I got laid off, I went to see a dermatologist because I had a spot on my face. And my dad, being all doomsday about it, he's like, that could be cancer, go check it out. And I'm like, okay, well, nobody wants to hear the C word, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll go check it out. Don't want anything to get worse. And the dermatologist says, well, it's not cancer, but it was tested positive for lupus. And I was like, lupus is an autoimmune disease. And they were like, yeah, so we're going to send you to a rheumatologist. I'm like, great. Here goes the journey from doctor to doctor to doctor, which I have a lot of experience going from doctor to doctor to doctor when I was young. I had a lot of that experience. So I'm just like, and maybe that's what started it. Now that I come to think of it, I burned those manuscripts. I started having stomach problems. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. All the blood tests. Anyway, I digress. The sickness or the illness was basically a just massive, massive tiredness. And my skin was breaking out in these weird red things, and nobody knew what they really were. As I started using, actually, that's when I found the help of the most wonderful Reiki master teacher on the planet. My Reiki master teacher is amazing. And I said, I need to do something. I'm eating well, I'm exercising, I'm doing all the things that I was taught as a health coach and my many certifications. I'm doing all those things. I need help. And she says, well, within 3 to 5 consecutive sessions is when my clients start seeing shifts. And I said, sign me up for 5 right now. I was convinced.
Okay. I'm going to invite you to share a very basic explanation of what that means, because I think it's a term that general public may hear lots, but not everybody totally understands. So can you explain what it is that you do as a Reiki practitioner?
Yes. So Reiki is the Japanese art of stress reduction, and it utilizes life force energy to reduce the stress and heal the physical, mental, spiritual issues that we usually bring forth with stress. So essentially, it's like the badassest stress reduction thing you could possibly do. It works on your mindset. It works on little physical shifts in your body. It's essentially bringing in source energy in a concentrated way. And the Reiki practitioner is just a conduit for that life force energy.
So we're going to take a short break right now, but I'll be back with my guest within 60 seconds. Ladies, unlock your inner badass and transform your life with my monthly subscription workshop. For just $47 a month, you'll have exclusive access to work closely with me, Mahara Wayman, as we dive deep into all things badass, from personal development to conquering your goals. Imagine waking up every day with confidence, purpose, and a smile that radiates your newfound strength. Take advantage of this badass opportunity and join us today at www.mindfulnesswithmahara.com and start your journey toward a happier, more confident you. Smile when no one is looking. You've earned it. Okay, that's a lot.
Okay, you need more basic?
No, it's good. So what I'm hearing is that, you've had multiple opportunities to question your beliefs, your stories, your badassery all through your life. And for those of you listening, it often starts young. Like we are spiritual beings having a human existence. Sometimes the spiritual being is really very vocal from like 2. But so you've had this a few times, history is repeating itself.
Mm-hmm.
You discovered this practice. You obviously felt a lot better from it. So you learned it. You are now doing it as a health coach. But I want to go back to your comment where you said you actually didn't really make many changes because some of the same challenges that defined you in the corporate world, you still took with you when you started your sideline business. When can you give us an example of when that was very, very obvious and you couldn't ignore it anymore?
Actually, it was during those first Reiki sessions that I had. I started shifting the way I showed up online, and I started shifting who my services were for. And towards, I want to say, after I became trained as a practitioner and I got all of my hours in for certification, that's when I decided I was completely pivoting my business and I was dropping the health coaching thing because I didn't want to help people. I didn't want to help people lose weight or help their kids eat healthy. Like I want all children to eat healthy. I'm not saying that I don't want to help. However, I realized by aligning myself with that Reiki energy, with that life force energy, that I wasn't the person to do that. That was not my battle. That was not my passion. And so I shifted everything. And when I first started my Reiki practice, I ended up with 3 clients literally the day after I got my certification in hand. So
Beautiful.
I was like,
Now,
well, this is better.
so, and you still were working in corporate at this point?
Um, at that point, wow, that's good because timeline really messes up for me around that area. No, I believe I was not working in corporate. I was taking a break. I actually, yeah, because when I got laid off, that's when I decided to take a break and just jump into my business. And I forgot to prioritize my fun with my family. So my family was like out in the pool and I could hear them, and I'm sitting there putting together canvas, and I'm like, this sucks. But yeah, so I did have a break from corporate for a little while. And that was during that time when I was doing Reiki sessions and getting my certifications for Reiki. I was not in corporate at that point.
Okay. So, love that you've done some growth. You've discovered a whole new practice. You found um, some perhaps physical release. You're feeling better physically. You've made some pivots in your business, your online business. What happened for you next? What came next in this journey?
I have always had an affinity for teaching. I feel like I learn better when I teach, and that could be true for all the people, right? However, uh, I'm not a huge fan of just learning something and letting it sit because my brain doesn't retain it. So I literally have to rearrange it in my brain so that I can teach it for someone else and then I understand it better. So when I was getting my certification for Reiki practitioner, there's 2 more levels before you become a master teacher, right? And my massage therapist was like, well, why don't you just get your Reiki master? I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm just a Reiki practitioner. We're good. I don't need to do that. But then after I got my certification and I started learning more about people's needs and what they need for their healing journey, I was like, I need them to I need them to heal themselves daily. Like they need to learn how to do this for themselves because I am only one person, and I get it, there's tons of Reiki practitioners out there, but I am only one person and I want to teach other people. And so I started down that path of teaching and certifying women in Reiki. And that was the funnest thing up until that point that I had ever done. I was like, this is amazing.
Why was it so fun? And I love that your energy has just gone through the roof. Those of you that are listening to this, I'll tell you, she just like this grin. Like obviously she has amazing energy, but she is giggling, laughing. So I believe you when you said that was the funnest thing up until that point. But why do you think that was?
Community. I was building my own community of awesome women. Like these women were amazing. And I'm like, you guys are the best. And I have a small community still because I still do monthly uh, Reiki circles, but I've changed them to be called spiritual gifts circles because all of these women, they're intuitive, they have different spiritual gifts. I even went off and taught courses on developing your psychic abilities, whichever the heaviest ones are for you, or the most prominent ones are for you. And so once a month, I still love to get together with these women and discover the new things that they're doing. It's just amazing, and I love the community of it. And it's a place that I've cultivated for myself based on people just, oh, I like your energy. I'm like, good, come to my group. I love you too. Let's go. So I think that was really important for me. And if anybody listening knows anything about human design, my profile is 2-4, which means I could be a total hermit and like just dig myself in a room for a couple days, like leave me alone. I'm working on my creative stuff. Or the 4-line profile is very much networking and community and relying on your network of people. And so for me, we share, I facilitate the circle, but we share gifts that are amazing. And just talking to these women, and I've even expanded it. I'm like, yeah, if you want to come, let's go. You just have to believe in spirituality. That's it. That's all. You don't need to have Reiki certifications, whatever. So I do have some of my Reiki students in there that I've had, like, they've been certified by me for years now. And then I have new women who have different abilities that are fantastic. I just love them. So that's what makes it fun for me. And I think it was the preparing the lessons, and the classes were too long. I set up the classes to where they were too long for me to teach. And so I would have to sleep for 2 days or rest for 2 days afterwards. So I thought that's a lot of energy moving in those classes too. So I I had decided to not do it, any of it anymore, and that's why initially I started the opening exercises and the crystals for dream recall, because I had a community of women that I wanted to teach other things, but at the same time, for myself to experiment on myself was very important to me. Like, is this going to work? Let me check it out. And when I did that, that's when I was like, wow, these characters would look good in a book. And I'm like, okay. So I took a break from Reiki for a while, just doing random here and there, sessions or whatever. And it was kind of freeing, but it again didn't pay the bills. So I decided, well, I'm being invited to, come and be an expert with this one company. Like, you have all these skills that we need. We want to hire you. And I was like, well, I'd have to jump into what I was doing in corporate again. And I don't know about that. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to ask my guides. I'm just going to open my heart and see what happens. And sure enough, I said yes. And I was able to feel lighter as far as income goes. And then I could pursue my creative passions. But right before I knew I was going to start, that's when I wrote the first book.
Okay, everybody, let's just take a deep breath.
Whew.
Whew. That's a lot of learning, a lot of growing, a lot of connecting, which is, I think, our number one thing in the world as humans, is that we want to make connections. I do want to ask one thing, though, that I thought of as you were talking, sharing that with us. Do you think we all have special abilities or psychic
Yes.
abilities or special powers?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with you. I know that some of us have developed them, some ignore them, some intuitively know that we have them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's a curious little sideline, because so many times I run into people that are like, that is evil, that I don't understand, therefore I don't want to go there. And
Mm.
I feel a little bit of me feels badly, because I'm like, oh, but you have no idea where there can be, like, going there could be the best thing ever. So I love that you talked about this idea of inviting people that perhaps aren't certified, but know they've got something special. Because I agree with you. I think we all, because I believe we are spiritual beings, we have all different types of gifts with us. Is there a gift that you have that came as a surprise to you? Because you mentioned right from the very get-go, I've always been creative. I'm a creative person. That's beautiful. But is there a gift that you recognize today that was a bit of a surprise?
Oh, well, that's a very good question. I think I kind of just go with it. No matter what's happening to me, I kind of just go with it. So I discovered that I've always been clairsentient, so I can feel energy. And the Reiki opened that up like floodgates. And I was like, how come my hands are so hot? Why is my ear on fire? Why do I have, why is there ringing? And, fortunately, I had a good teacher to walk me through, like, don't freak out, you know. And then through certain spiritual development courses that I've been a part of, I discovered clairvoyance, which is a very strange gift to uncover, uh, because I always tell people I see better with my eyes closed. And I'm like, because that doesn't make sense, right? But clairvoyance is definitely, it doesn't mean that I can see the future, uh, but sometimes it freaks my husband out because we'll be watching TV and I'll be like, oh, she's going to pick the purple helmet. And then she picks the purple helmet on TV. He's like, have you watched this episode before? I'm like, this is a live show, honey. Like, seriously? And he's like, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. Like I see it first, but I do. I see it first in my mind's eye. So that one took me by surprise. The clairvoyance took me by surprise, and I never wanted to claim it until recently. And I think a lot of that has to do with the work that I've done with helping others discover their clair sense, if you will, right? Because I used to do that with a crystal Reiki class that I used to have. And clairvoyance seems to be pretty prominent in my circle of people, I guess. Like attracts like, law of attraction, all that good stuff. So
It's so interesting because the terminology that you're using is fairly new to me. And yet what you're describing, that ain't new to me. Like that's very familiar to me. I was saying on, I think, another podcast, I shared a story and I'll quickly share it with you here. I was listening to an audiobook. I have severe tinnitus in both my ears. So I'm constantly listening just because I don't want to hear that. I'd rather hear a story or whatever. I listen to lots of things. But recently I was listening to an audiobook called The Soul's Journey. In it, um, the therapist documents his experiences with clients describing where their soul goal goes in between incarnations. And at one point, he's asking his client a question, getting clarity. And I answered the same answer that the client answered. And as I answered it, I'm in the car on a holiday, on a trip with my husband and on our two dogs. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. I just answered it. And then I answered it because I know it. Like, I know it. I know that this story is authentic for me. So that was kind of a mind-blowing experience because I've had all my life of being able to answer, like I see things or I feel things or I hear things, but to connect it to the topic, which was where the soul lives in between incarnations, was kind of freaky, just say the least. But I do thank you for that explanation. And honestly, guys, I don't know about you, but I just want to talk. I want to know more about this. I want to find out. I want to be tested. I want to know the right words. But really, linking this back to being a badass, which is what this program is all about. What I'm hearing is that you said it yourself, as I got closer to the things that gave me joy, I felt lighter. And
mm-hmm.
for those of you that are listening, that's really what being a badass is all about. It's not being the toughest or the strongest or the smartest or the prettiest or the thinnest or the richest or any of that crap. It's about putting your hand on your heart and saying, I matter and I'm going to listen to me. And if connecting with friends and developing or discussing spirituality is what fills your cup, then the more you do it, the more badass you're going to feel because you're just honoring who you are. And it's so tough for so many of us because I think there's this idea that I don't have time to honor myself. I got to get shit done. I got to get a job. I got to get married. I got to raise good kids. Isn't my English is atrocious? I got it. If my mother would give me a good spank, well, she would spank me because I'm an adult, but I do think, not to make light of it, that it's easy to fall into the trap that our Western civilization has laid for us. And I do think it's a trap. Come
Mm-hmm.
over here, sweetie, and you'll be happy. Do what
Mm-hmm.
be happy. Versus,
Follow the carrot.
yeah, follow the carrot, right? In my case, it was follow the chocolate bar,
Mm.
follow the ice cream. But I really do appreciate and love that you have managed to fill your cup with your curiosity as you have gone on this journey. But now it's time to talk about this experience where you wrote a flipping manuscript in 4 weeks. What
I
is,
know, right?
tell us about these characters. I want to know about these characters because they came to you for a reason.
Yes. So the most main character, there's a lot of main characters. My writing is very multi-point of view, so if you can't keep up, it's probably not the book for you. I've had actually a bad review that said, "Oh my God, I couldn't even finish it because, multiple points of view." And I'm like, okay, well, what are you reading? What do you enjoy to read? And then how is it different from what I write? And I have found that a lot of paranormal romance novels are in first person. right? A lot of them have very one point of view. Even one of my favorite ones, Stephanie Meyer's Twilight, right? That is from Bella's point of view. My characters are very different. So Sabrina is the main female character in my book, and she's very reserved, practical, pragmatic. She's a therapist by trade. She owns her own therapy business, and but she has like a getaway, so it's she works in the center of Las Vegas, and she lives outside of Las Vegas in Blue Diamond, which is an old mining town, right? But it does not feel like Vegas at all. It's just like very away from everything. And so she essentially, she likes her peace and quiet. She doesn't believe in flights of fancy or matters of the heart, like, oh yeah, whatever. I mean, she's in her 30s, and she's like, I don't have time. I don't have time for guys. Everything's freaky. I don't want to be stalked. Like, I'm not even going to tell people where I live. She's very, very reserved. Her best friend, not so much. She's a tattoo artist, and they're like they're like peas and carrots and oil and water at the same time. But she her friend's always egging her on to, oh, go out, that guy's looking at you, and she's like, whatever. She goes to this on a date with this guy in this concert, and she sees, because she loves rock music, that's like her guilty pleasure, is like heavy metal music, rock music, that kind of thing. So she goes to this concert or this club that's playing that kind of music with on this date with this guy, and she's absolutely just enveloped in the guitar solos. She's like, I don't know what it is, but I lose my mind when I hear these. So she takes her friend back the next night to the club, and her friend's like, that guy's looking at you. She's like, whatever, he can't see any of us. So she's very practical, like, whatever, whatever, whatever. And then enter Richard, the rock star. And he's very much like, he has a haunted past, and the way he lives his life is for the adventure, because he's never going to live his life the way he used to, because that ended up very, very with a lot of grief in his life, essentially. So he's got this haunted past. And there's a push and pull in the beginning, like she doesn't want to, but she does really like him, and he just goes for it. And eventually they ended up getting together, and the more physically connected that they become, the more they discover these psychic abilities that they're like, oh my God, what is this? I don't know. Oh my God, what are we doing? And so they have to seek the help of a spiritual teacher to teach them all the things that they never knew about chakras and energy work and spirituality and psychic connections and things like that. And the person who teaches them that, everything that he teaches them in the book is actually at one point what I have taught my students, from the basic chakra 101 all the way up to psychic development. And so that's where that part's true. So it's kind of fiction, but kind of not. And yeah, it's just a really fun adventure. There's a lot of twists and turns. The characters are nuanced. Everybody has some type of mindset issue that's in the way of their happiness. And so when they push through that and they help each other through that, all the characters help each other through that, that's when they get to being truly happy. And so I've had people say, oh my gosh, I've read your book and I'm just so happy and joyful right now. And I'm like, okay, good. Because I didn't want to add all that. There's a lot of those kinds of things that end in a lot of sorrow. There's a lot of trauma triggering things in other books that I did not want to add to mine. And so I was very cognizant of that when I wrote it.
Okay. I am an avid reader, listener, used to be reader. Now, as I mentioned, I listen, and I love the concept, love the characters. And all I can think was, is this a standalone, or is it going to be made into a series? Like, do these characters, now that they have found themselves and understand their powers, for example, are they going to have other adventures where they tackle other challenges or other? She's nodding, folks. If you're not watching the video,
Oh
she's
yeah.
actually
Oh
nodding.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it is a series. It is a
Beautiful.
series.
Beautiful. We are going to put information. So the book is out already. It's already been
It
published.
is.
Guys, check the show notes because I will, of course, include that information in the show notes so you can get the first in the series from this new, beautiful spiritual novelist. I love fantasy and romance. Patricia Briggs is one of my favorite authors, and she's written a werewolf coyote series, all kinds of. I don't know if you should check her out. She's amazing. But I do love that story. But let's just tie this up. You've had a journey with lots of highs and lots of lows and a lot of realism at an early age. My heart kind of broke when you shared that at 14 you threw your stuff away, but I understand, right? First of all, that's the beginning of really strong emotions and hormones and all of that stuff, but
Oh, yeah.
pressure to conform, I think for women especially, really comes to light very heavy at that age. So I feel kind of badly that you went through that. But on the flip side is it's okay because she's back doing what she does best, which is to write, which I think is beautiful. But you've learned some really beautiful lessons along the way, which is, first of all, the body does not lie. Doesn't like if it, everything gets held in the body one way or another. And the universe, folks, well, however you like to think of your world. In my world, the universe always lets you know what you need to know if you're willing to see it. Sometimes we don't want to see it, so it just finds another way to come knocking on our door. But it sounds to me, Sarah, like you are listening and you are experiencing and you're comfortable. You're comfortable with all of the experiences that you've had. And I want to thank you for that, because every time you share your story, you actually give other people permission to be comfortable in their story. And that's really the number one thing that I want from our conversations on this podcast is I want people to question and get curious about their story. And if it's not working for you, change it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be a difficult thing. You can find help for that. Is there anything else that I forgot that I haven't added in this wrap up about your journey that you'd like our listeners to hear?
No, this was pretty thorough. I mean, I really appreciate the time here. It's been amazing. I could talk to you for like 100 years, right?
We're going to do this
It's
again.
like, woo,
We're
yeah,
totally
yeah,
doing
yeah,
this
yeah.
again. Like after I hit
Totally.
record, we can still keep talking. But I want to thank you because many times we as human beings suffer in silence, grow in silence. And I think it does take a special type of courage to share those journeys, not to be silent anymore, but to put our hand up and say, hey, I've got a question, or hey, I've got a story, or wow, this could be an interesting conversation, especially when we are in troubled times. I think the more conversation we have, the better. Sarah, it has been an absolute delight. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and check out the show notes. Join me next week or later on in this week, because I may actually start dropping episodes more often than once a week. Yes, I may. But I wish you all an amazing week. And if you've got any questions or thoughts or comments about this particular episode, just, make a comment or DM me directly. My name is Mahara. My guest today has been Sarah Perez, spiritual novelist. Go get her book. And I will see you all next week. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to The Art of Badassery. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insights to help unleash your inner badass. If you found this podcast helpful, please leave a rating or review on your favorite platform. Your feedback not only helps me improve the show, but it also helps others like yourself discover the podcast. Until next time, keep embracing your authenticity and living life on your terms. Here's to you.